Here it is. I've been married for 20 years, and my wife and I have been together for 25 years, raising 3 children aged 16, 15, and 13. Around 6 to 12 years ago, I came across a text on my wife's phone. I had noticed that she had been receiving more texts and somewhat concealing them. Despite taking our new dog for walks, she started driving to a park instead of strolling in the woods or fields near our house. She had also mentioned losing a necklace, attributing it to lifting our lab into the car. The text brought up the necklace, and her response suggested caution about walking in the woods with unfamiliar men. When I confronted her, she dismissed it as nothing, just a guy she had met while walking the dog. I'm struggling to understand the situation. We had a conversation during which she shed a few tears and assured me that she wouldn't meet with him again. I reluctantly accepted her response, but she subtly implied that my controlling and jealous nature contributed to the situation. About a month later, I arrived home early to find her car in the driveway, but she and the dog were nowhere to be seen. I noticed a parked car down the country lane adjacent to our house, which struck me as odd. With a strange feeling, I ventured outside and started working on a few tasks, like cutting firewood. To my surprise, I spotted my wife emerging from the woods near our house with the dog, walking down the lane into a field, and eventually making her way back to the house. I found this behavior peculiar, but greeted her nonetheless. As she went into the garden, I observed a man emerging from the woods where she had just been. It turned out to be one of the fathers from my son's swimming club. I was taken aback when I noticed her phone lying on the side, revealing a message cautioning him to be cautious when leaving the woods, because her husband was at home. Approaching my wife, I sought an explanation for this alarming message. Our conversation escalated into an argument. She vehemently denied any wrongdoing, insisting that they only walked and talked, nothing more. According to her, it happened only twice, and she accused me of being paranoid and overly controlling. I couldn't substantiate anything, so life returned to a semblance of normalcy. A few months later, financial constraints led me to take a job that required extended periods away from home, working at sea for months at a time. Initially, we managed, though I detested the separation. The financial necessity kept me committed. I continued this routine for 4 years, but over time, our relationship grew more distant. There were occasions when she seemed disinterested in intimacy upon my return, only expressing interest just before I headed back to work. In 2015, a bombshell hit me when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. My world was truly shaken. I received medical leave from work and underwent treatment in London, which was 3 hours away from our home. I stayed in London 4 nights a week during this period, yet she never once accompanied me. Reluctantly, after 8 months, I returned to work, but the experience was unpleasant. Cancer had prompted me to reevaluate my life, and the desire to be close to my family overshadowed any inclination to be away. I began to observe that my wife was unresponsive to many of my texts and frequently occupied when I tried to FaceTime for family conversations. It seemed like a burden for her. I also noticed a change in our exchanges. While I consistently expressed love at the end, she no longer reciprocated. Furthermore, she had ceased wearing her wedding ring. As an experiment, I stopped saying I love you at the conclusion of our phone calls, and she didn't utter it either. After a year, I made the decision to resign from my job, seeking a more fulfilling and family-centric life. Surprisingly, her reaction was less than supportive. Although she didn't vocalize any objections, it was evident that she wasn't pleased with my choice. I was still undergoing hormone injections as part of my cancer treatment, and they were causing some noticeable side effects. Upon my return, or just before it, my dear wife declared that I shouldn't expect intimacy anymore. We hadn't been intimate since the beginning of my treatment, and uncertainty lingered about whether it would be possible. Physical touch and affection were scarce. She never initiated hugs or touches, responding only when I embraced her, and even then it ceased as soon as I let go. In an effort to embark on a new venture, we decided to set up a business in the food industry. I took on the task of renovating the premises. One day, upon my return, I discovered her vibrator casually left on the bed, an unfamiliar set of car keys, and a pair of snug camouflage trousers laid out on the bed. Curiosity led me to pick them up, only to discover a condom tucked in the pocket. The revelation left me utterly shocked, a feeling amplified by the emotional impact of the hormone injections. Upon her return, I confronted her about the casually left vibrator on the bed, to which she nonchalantly responded with an apologetic, "Oops." Struggling to contain my emotions, I couldn't help but question. "And the condom?" She became defensive, insisting that I was paranoid and claiming she had found the condom in the house, offering a string of explanations. However, a persistent gut feeling had been telling me something was amiss, prompting me to check the stash of condoms we kept in a drawer by the bed. To my dismay, a significant number were missing, as I had counted them just the day before. Strangely, I chose not to address it immediately. I waited, sensing her tension and anger. The next morning, I confronted her, revealing that the condom had indeed been in our drawer the day before. Once again, she responded with anger and defensiveness. She asserted that she couldn't disclose the intended recipient, but vaguely mentioned that a friend of hers was having an affair, and the condom was for her. However, she refused to reveal the friend's identity. Our discussions turned into arguments, and I expressed my frustration. I struggled to trust her, but eventually she disclosed the name. It turned out to be a couple with whom we shared a close friendship, and who also had 3 children. Expressing my disbelief, I questioned how she could support our friend in cheating on her husband, who was also our friend. In response, she downplayed it, claiming it was more of a joke than actual assistance. I expressed confusion, admitting that I didn't understand the humor in the situation. Despite our ongoing discussions and arguments over the next few weeks, I found it challenging to believe her. Given the numerous lies that had already been told, I suggested marriage counseling, which she agreed to, but she mentioned that our schedule with the new business was too hectic at the moment and we would have to postpone it until February. As February approached, I booked the appointment, but she didn't attend. I had another conversation with her, emphasizing that if we weren't going for marriage counseling, we needed to spend quality time together, just the 2 of us, on a date. She reluctantly agreed. It was challenging to get her to commit, but eventually she joined me for a brief 40-minute outing 3 weeks ago. Since discovering the condom, my suspicions have heightened. To gather more information, I set up a camera with a microphone at our workplace. Some of her friends who also work part-time for us, including the one involved in the affair, have been inadvertently recorded in conversations. In these discussions, she portrays me as paranoid, controlling, and jealous without ever disclosing her actions. They discuss her contemplating leaving me, but deciding to wait until I receive the results from my 3-year-long battle with cancer. She has relocated to the spare bedroom and avoids any physical contact with me. Living in this manner has become unbearable, but I'm hesitant to disrupt the family unless it's absolutely necessary. I yearn to discover a way to reunite us, but the internal turmoil is taking a toll on me. The lack of clarity perplexes me. If she no longer loves me, why not articulate it? Feeling compelled to address the situation, I am contemplating giving her an ultimatum this weekend. She must move back in, and we need an honest conversation about what truly transpired. I appreciate everyone taking the time to read this. The sentiments shared echo what I've been sensing in my heart. The person I'm with now is not the same individual I married, and I understand that change is inevitable over time. Regrettably, cancer has served as a profound eye-opener for me. While I yearn for honesty from her, it appears unlikely to materialize. This reluctance might be the reason she avoided attending marriage counseling with me. I've grown weary of feeling compelled to scrutinize every word she says in search of the truth. The frequency of her lies has reached a point where it seems routine to her, extending beyond matters of infidelity to trivial details that wouldn't normally bother me. It frustrates me that she paints me in a negative light to her friends, portraying herself as the virtuous one. Fortunately, I've recorded these conversations, though I doubt I can use them. What I truly need is the courage to sit down and have an honest conversation with my dear wife. Unfortunately, finding a time when we can be alone is challenging. It's disheartening to feel like I'm clinging to a deteriorating marriage and being used, and this has become a disheartening way of life. However, I've reached my limit. Once again, I appreciate the support from all of you. I'm grateful for having posted here. I won't hold back. As a step towards self-improvement, I've joined the gym, aiming to get back in shape for both myself and my kids. I've come to the realization that things have gone too far. A few months ago, I had an initial conversation with a lawyer, and I've decided to reach out to them again. I've opted not to inform her about this. Initially, my intention was to present her with an ultimatum. Either we proceed with a divorce, or she needs to be transparent about the truth and commit to significant changes, all laid out up front. However, it seems like providing any warning might not be the best course of action. I lack concrete evidence regarding the identity of the other man or men involved. During the years I spent working away, it's uncertain whether it was just one man or multiple. The situation remains unclear, and I strongly suspect an affair has taken place. Although I have my suspicions about who it might be, I have no means to definitively prove it. I do know that the day I discovered the condom, the person present at my house was married. He is a builder who has been involved in projects for us and my in-laws who live next door over the past few years while I was away. He's quite talkative and self-assured, often casually entering the kitchen and sitting down to have his lunch at the table when I was home. The numerous signs of an affair and her consistent dishonesty leave me inclined to believe that something has indeed occurred. Alternatively, it's plausible that she wants to create the appearance of a happy marriage while hiding her infidelity. To create the impression of an affair, possibly as a strategy to paint me as the antagonist and prompt me to leave, casting me as the one at fault. As someone here wisely pointed out, the simplest explanation is often the correct one. In my personal assessment, I believe she may have had a fling or two, but is unwilling to confront and admit her actions. Instead, she opts to shift blame onto me, creating distance. This, in turn, makes me suspicious, allowing her to portray me as controlling and paranoid to others. My wife's friend who had an affair wouldn't have required my wife's assistance to obtain a condom. I recognize this, and I'm now aware that there were likely more instances. It's a regrettable realization that I allowed this to persist for so long. Adding to the complexity, the friend who had the affair is married to a friend of mine. Due to the manipulative mind games, I refrained from informing him earlier. This weekend, I plan to have a conversation with him and share what I've discovered. I feel terrible for him as his wife is now seeking a divorce, expressing her desire to end the marriage. While she is a cheater, at least his wife is honest about wanting a divorce. She may not admit to any wrongdoing, instead attributing the separation to him being controlling and paranoid. This also applies to my wife and me. I understand the decision I need to make, and it's not an easy one, but it seems like I've been pushed into it by my wife's actions. Letting go of my marriage is a difficult process, even though I recognize it's already over. I've decided to reach out to the solicitor I consulted when things initially started to deteriorate. It has been valuable to receive insights from women and realize that the challenges are similar, whether it's a man or woman in this situation. It's a reminder that these circumstances can happen to anyone. I can go online and review her phone bill, but it's not as straightforward since my wife uses WhatsApp. I attempted to encourage her to use it while I was away for work, but she found it too challenging. Surprisingly, now that I'm back, she uses it regularly. Unfortunately, I can't identify who she calls through WhatsApp, and I'm aware that she frequently deletes messages. I overheard her mentioning this to a friend. The question that lingers is, why go through the trouble of deleting messages if there's nothing to hide? She avoids opening her phone in front of me, fearing I might glimpse her passcode. The whole process is erratic. She initiates unlocking and then abruptly stops putting her phone down. It's quite perplexing. To be fair, she can be a dedicated and skilled worker, particularly in her role as a chef, where she excels. However, I suspect she has reached a point of discontent and would prefer me to be away working, allowing her to avoid certain responsibilities. During my time working away, I earned a substantial salary compared to my current earnings, providing us with a comfortable lifestyle, including a weekly cleaner and gardener. I understand the challenges of looking after kids, having taken care of ours before they all started school. Although I've never seen myself as passive and have been described as someone who doesn't tolerate foolishness, I acknowledge that I've allowed my wife to take control of our marriage and relationship. Despite confronting her at times, I often back down, possibly because I desperately want the marriage to succeed, even though it feels lifeless, and I'm avoiding facing that reality. If it weren't for our kids, I would have ended it a long time ago. The situation is complicated. We co-own a house, run 2 small businesses together, have 3 children, and her parents live in our house. Her father is in a wheelchair. I've allowed her to use these aspects against me. I've invested so much in keeping my family together that I've neglected myself. And I attribute some of that to being adopted. Now I realize I need to reclaim my life. In my professional life, I've learned to confront problems directly and address them head-on. It's time to apply the same principle to my personal life. While I initially considered discussing our marriage this evening, I've decided to heed the advice I've received and speak with the solicitor tomorrow to plan my next steps. I'm preparing for a significant decision day, D-Day. It's peculiar. She's been a bit more pleasant the past couple of days, even cooking Sunday dinner today. However, she has also managed to slip in a few digs at me. Criticisms about why I didn't do certain things or how something is my fault, like not checking the emails. I've refrained from getting defensive and simply pointed out that these were responsibilities for both of us. She didn't respond. In addition to our interactions, she's currently not on good terms with her parents, who reside in the annex to our house. An arrangement that was her idea, not mine, as I've reminded her. She barely talks to her dad and is noticeably terse with her mother. I find it almost amusing when she takes out her phone in front of me and contemplates unlocking it, only to realize I'm there. In response, she awkwardly fiddles with her phone, repeatedly opening and closing the case. It comes off as rather pathetic, really. I've always used a PIN code on my phone due to my travel and work away, and the entire family knew it. She could access my phone anytime she wanted. However, when she decided to lock her phone at her friend's suggestion, I changed mine. Apologies for the language. I reached out to the lawyer solicitor today, and I have an appointment scheduled to discuss matters with them tomorrow. Signaling a step forward. After work today, I plan to hit the gym. Interestingly, my wayward wife is quite cautious when entering her code. She avoids putting it in when I'm around, but of course she insists she has nothing to hide. My meeting took place over the phone, but it was interrupted when someone entered my workplace, and I preferred not to be overheard. The discussion primarily focused on costs and understanding the divorce process in the UK. I received advice here to explore free consultations with various solicitors, ensuring I find ones offering an initial meeting at no charge. It's crucial for me to organize and clarify my finances before initiating the divorce proceedings. I need to maintain a clear-headed approach and avoid getting overly stressed, although it's easier said than done. One of the most challenging aspects of this situation is the feeling of being lost. For the past 25 years, my wayward wife and I have functioned as a team. We even worked together until 15 years ago when we had kids. Despite my departure to work at sea to support our family, we shared a common goal of acquiring a small farm and living and working together on it. Around 7 years ago, we started drifting apart when I began working away. This was also around the time she had her first affair. Whether it was an emotional affair or a physical affair, I'm not entirely sure. It could have been both. Over the years, I observed a shift where our focus diminished as a couple and increasingly revolved around her. Then the unexpected blow of cancer struck me. Emotionally, it really took a toll. Despite the challenges, I completed the treatment and, once cleared by the doctor, returned to sea. Although I still had to undergo 3 monthly checkups. Then it dawned on me, whom am I doing all of this for? My wife won't even show any affection when I come home on leave. I needed clarity, and that's when I discovered the second affair and the condom, providing concrete evidence alongside her behavior. I'm fairly certain she had a fling or engaged in some form of intimate encounter. Here's the dilemma. What steps do I take now? If I initiate divorce proceedings, it's likely we'll have to sell our farm, our retirement plan, and our business. Then what's my next move? Returning to sea could jeopardize custody of our kids, and if I stay, I lack training for alternative careers, especially considering I'm in my 50s. The situation feels overwhelming, and there don't seem to be any straightforward or positive solutions.